Hi, Professor Wills. I am back with another video lecture to talk about uh, athletes and sports in art history. So today I'm going to show you a couple of ancient arenas where there are bigger implications for those who compete within them. And then I'm going to pivot to an example of painting depicting a very unusual sport that had big cultural value and ceremonial meaning as well. So without further ado, let's get into that PowerPoint. All right, how many of you have seen that movie on the upper right? Russell Crowe, I think, might have won an Academy Award for playing a gladiator in the movie by the same name. So fans of Roman history, that might just be the movie for you to watch this weekend. But the venue in which some of its scenes were supposedly taking place was no other than the legendary Colosseum, a ruin of a sports arena that is still with us to this day in Rome, Italy. Dates from the year 70 to the year 82. As you can see, it inspired what we are now familiar with the modern sports arena, whether LA's own Colosseum, or perhaps something local to us, the Rose Bowl. This was, at one time, the world's largest amphitheater, seating as many as 50,000 spectators. We've already seen that in Greece. You can have semicircular theaters to showcase dramas and religious plays. But here the Romans preferred gladiatorial matches and animal hunts. They definitely had a hunger for violence and blood. It's made up of a complex series of barrel vaults. So that is fundamentally an arch that begins with the arch principle, where you have, again, that displacement of weight, not necessarily directly from overhead, but down the sides of that curved form. Extending it into a tunnel-like shape results in that barrel vault. That is a concept that endures in architecture to this day. Just think about those freeway tunnels heading into downtown Los Angeles, and there you have an example of a barrel vault. So through as many as 72 gateways of these barrel vaults, you can make your way into the arena. And the stacked elevated seating that you can see in various tiers, just like we see in our own stadiums. Now, looking at the image on the bottom right, you can see that the playing field itself would be here, but there is a below ground view that you now can see. And it's there that you would find the waiting rooms for the human gladiators, sometimes willing athletes, sometimes unwilling. These were slaves made to fight, as well as animals of various types who were also thrust mercilessly into a battle against each other, against slaves, against other gladiators. Since Italy has its hot summers, just like we do here in Los Angeles, the entire thing had a series of awnings that could be pulled across to provide shade for the spectators. Outside, you can see that it's made up of 4 elevations or bands that run around the majority of its circumference. The entire height of the place is about 160 feet in height, and each entrance or column area, arch space is flanked by columns, and sometimes you find a mix of both Corinthian and Ionic and Doric-esque order designs, showing another example of the Roman love of Greek architecture. but the mixed use of it is definitely a Roman flair. All right, so we pivot from gladiators in Europe now to the famous ball court games of Mesoamerica. So this is an image of the great ball court associated with Maya Toltec cultures of Mexico, dating from the 11th to 13th centuries, constructed in its buildings of stone and, of course, an earth and grass playing field. Historians have discovered that the game of playing ball, or some kind of a ball game with a court, dates back in this region to an even earlier period than the Maya and Toltec peoples, to the ancient Olmec peoples. However, this is a court that's a great example of a well-preserved ball court, which was an enduring source of entertainment, but more importantly, it had significant ritualistic meaning. Shaped like a letter I, its length is defined by two massive 27-foot tall walls on which each can be found a stone ring. I have a detail shot on the upper right for you to see that ring. The goal was that the ball would be kicked or bounced with a player's head into that hole of that ring to achieve a score. Sounds a little bit like a mashup of basketball and soccer, doesn't it? But unlike today's FIFA games, these were far more deadly. There would have to be a sacrifice from the losing team to the gods. There's a sculptural relief, in fact, that shows teams of players with one player among them having taken one for the team, showing that player decapitated. Additional carvings show that there were likely racks of skulls on display near the playing field as well. So why all of the violence? Well, the game itself was a metaphor for the story of the twins, the sun and the moon, and their epic journey in the underworld. It's also symbolic of good versus evil themes. Okay, so now pivoting from Mexico, let's head back to the region of the Mediterranean, to a culture that existed much earlier than the Romans, even preceding the ancient Greeks. We've met them before. You might remember the snake goddess. This is an example of additional Minoan art, and this piece is called Bull Leaping, found at Knossos on the island of Crete, part of the Minoan civilization. It dates from 1400 to 1370 BCE and painted in fresco. What you can find here is a partially restored image. So some of the raised elements represent the original fresco, and as you can see, over time, parts of it have fallen away, but elements have been filled in to give you a comprehensive view of what the original artwork looked like. The subject is the bull leaping ceremony, in which young men performed this acrobatic maneuver of grabbing the bull's horns. And here's the leaping bull right here with its horns, and vaulting over its back. It's a likely event to celebrate the initiation of boys into manhood. It certainly describes athletic achievement and bravery. What you find here also interesting is that the girls are invited. In fact, the lighter colored figures are female, and darker colored figures in Minoan art are typically male. Their distinct figure types with these tiny wasp-like waists and elongated tapered arms and legs are very Minoan in their aesthetic. And what's also very Minoan is this mix of abstract pattern, which you can see in the frame, painted with abstract forms and patterns around the scene, as well as a love of curvilinear line. So if you look carefully, this bull has almost a balletic choreographed look as it is leaping up off the ground. It has a beautiful arch to its back with a concluding kind of S-curve to its tail. I've never seen a bull galloping and charging its opponent with such sweeping elegance. But there you have the Minoan aesthetic. What's also interesting is there are sculptures representing this that archaeologists have found. And so they think that this indeed was an ongoing practice, an ongoing event. And if you fast forward in time and think about bullfighting in places like Spain, Mexico, that's likely how this event evolved as a event that proves one's courage and manhood against such a formidable beast. Thanks for joining me.